I'm looking at my bench of unfinished projects and things that I started and haven't fully realized how to complete yet, and one of them sitting here is this birdhouse that I started for my neighbor. So I've cut all of the pieces. This came out of, like, I think this was a tabletop to a sewing table, and so I have a roof cut and I have sides, and here's the front and back of the birdhouse, and I'm trying to preserve some of the character of this wood, which I think is maple and cherry. We thought it was walnut because of the stain, but it's not. So what I need to do is assemble this thing, and rather than doing simple butt joints here, I want to cut a shallow rabbet in these pieces, because one, there's this nasty finish on the back that needs to go away, or the glue won't stick, and it'll also help give this some structure because it's just going to be glue. I don't think this is going to live outside. It's going to live inside, so I'm not necessarily concerned about, longevity, but I want there to be, decent glue surface. It's not going to be in the weather, but it needs to be held together. So there's a couple of ways to do this. I guess, one of the easier ways is if you have a dado stack. I could use my miter gauge here and use a dado stack and rip a dado or a rabbet that is the same width as my board, but I don't have that. I could still do it here. I could cut just multiple passes on the table saw and cut a shallow rabbet, but I don't want to do that. What I would like to do is use my fence. This is the easy way, the easy method. I set my fence to the width of this board, since this is the rabbet. I get my fence here, so it's just barely scratching. I know that's the correct width that I want, and then I could cut, I would cut here, and then flip and cut here. That'd be the quote-unquote easy way. The thing is, this cut needs to be the depth of my piece, and it can be a little squirrely. Your fingers can get kind of close, and I don't like that. So what I want to do is build myself a little jig that sits on top of my fence that I can clamp this piece to and run it through in order to cut that shallow rabbet. And that's what we're going to do. This is where I keep my plywood scraps, and theoretically I don't need anything gigantic for this. It's just a simple sled to clamp small pieces to. So something probably like this will be a decent front fence. And then I just need to find some pieces that I can use to wrap over my fence. And there we go. I think with these three pieces, we'll be able to build something quick and simple. I want to choose my flattest piece to be here, so that I know that the piece I'm clamping is going to be decently straight to the saw. So I think this is a decent piece for that. I could go a little higher. In fact, I think I am. I think I'm going to use this piece. It'll get me up a little higher. I can clamp higher. That means later on, if I want to cut other, pieces this way, taller pieces, I can clamp a little higher on the piece and it won't be as top tippy. Top tippy? I don't know. So, width of my piece here is about 3 3/8. It's a little heavy. 3 3/8 heavy. So I think what I will do is we will start with 3 1/2. I'll rip a piece down. This will be as good a piece as any for that. We'll rip this down and go from there. much play. I'm just going to creep up on this. No need to try to hit it. That looks and feels perfect. It's got a tiny little bit of slop, which is better than none. I'm not going to glue all of this together so that I can, if I need to, I can always put a piece of tape or a piece of paper in here as a shim to give this a little extra room. But I think the theory is, once I get this done, I'll show you, there's going to be a handle that you're going to use this piece with, and you'll want to pull it against the fence anyway. I don't want to have to rely on it fitting this perfectly. So let's get a piece cut down for this side, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do for the handle. Now that I have those cut, I'm just going to join these. And then cut it with a jigsaw. Just going to round these over and clean up on the sanders a bit. That should work. That worked out way better than I was expecting. Very nice. I'm not even going to have to sand that much. I'm just going to assemble it. Okay, so I've just put it on my fence, marked off some holes. I'm going to go ahead and pre-drill on this side. This is the back side. Then I'll flip it and countersink from the other side, and then we'll be able to assemble it. We'll be able to put those together, pre-drill into the cross piece, and then just assemble. Simple as that. I added a countersink, which isn't strictly needed on the handle side because we're not going to be clamping to it. But on the piece that we're going to be clamping our board to, we have to countersink these holes or else our piece won't sit flush. I'm going to let this piece sit right on here. I've seen quite a few people recommend not doing it this way. They'll put a piece of paper under this or shim it so that it's not riding like this. I'm perfectly okay with it sitting like this. I don't think it's going to cause me any issues, and if it does, I can always take some planer shavings or just hit the bottom of this on a sander so that we're working with this piece in the future. But for right now, I think this is fine. All I'm going to do is put a clamp on it and try and get a couple screws in it for both sides. Now, oh yeah, that feels great. It's just slightly tight, which is what I wanted. I don't want it to be sloppy and flopping around. I took some sandpaper and knocked down all the burrs, and with that, it fits very nicely on my fence. I'm ready to cut the rabbets in my front and back pieces here to accept the side piece. So in order to do this, all I should have to do is get my blade set to the same height as my piece. And we'll run a test cut before we do the real cut. But I'll just clamp this on here. And then all I'll have to do is push it through. So I ran some test cuts just to make sure that my blade depth was correct, and it is. It's absolutely perfect. There's just a tiny little bit sticking out there. But I was not happy with the fit. It was a little too difficult to push through. So what I ended up doing was stacking 2 pieces of blue tape in here. Taking this panel off, 2 pieces of blue tape seemed to do the trick. And now it runs. It's still tight. There's not a lot of slop. You can see there's a tiny gap here if I really push on it, but I think that's just due to the flex of the whole thing. So for right now, I think it's perfectly fine for assembling a birdhouse.